Hey there everyone, welcome back to Little Nightmares. Previously, we were in the kitchen where we ran into the twin chefs who seemed to be preparing for a feast and simultaneously cleaning a ton of dishes. For what, we do not know, but we do know that the kitchen is where the janitor has been sending the children from the prison. So we know what they were planning to do with us. We were able to get away using the body hooks. Pleasant thoughts, so let's see where that brings us. First things first, there is a collectible right behind us. So don't run too far ahead because we will get locked out of this one. Two collectibles, actually. So first the lamp. Light the lamp, not the rat. And Nomi. Hello, buddy. Can I carry you? Can I? Aha, I can totally carry you. I'll put you next to the nice fire. Alright? You good there? You're gonna try to follow me out of here like you normally do? No? I probably can't climb that, can I? Oh, he jumped just... Oh. Did you see that? He jumped. I could just sit there and do that for hours. Not literally, but... That made me happy. Nope. Am I in there? Depth perception. That didn't sound right out of context, did it? Okay, my depth perception is so off, I feel like I'm running off the edge. I totally was running off the edge. Oh my god, I'm totally like really pushing the edges here. Look at that. So yes, that is the sound of gulls you hear. My depth perception is going to completely screw with me here. But yeah, so that's why we've been rocking back and forth. I don't know if I would call this a ship exactly, but if you follow along with the kind of website lore and things such as that, or if you know anything about the story, the thing we're on is referred to as the Maw. And so we've essentially been on this massive ship, vessel type thing, and which is why we've been kind of partially submerged in water. I don't know if it's actually like a movable vessel. And if you go back to the nursery rhyme that I was commenting on in the previous episode, not the one we just did, but like the one where we were dealing with the janitor, the one we used on the TV to kind of distract him. The nursery rhyme starts off with the phrase "having a nightmare in a boat," or at least that's what people think it refers to. So I know that the sound people have said that there was no connection between that and the story, but I'm like, I don't know. Like, can we really ignore that? See if I can make it to this chain. I totally cannot make it to this chain. I did that on purpose. Depth perception is the death of me. So this is referred to as the guest area, and you can see them arriving from a boat. I'm assuming that one actually moves, because I'm not entirely sure that the Maw moves. And if you kind of look at it, for one, even with the disparity in distance, you can see how massive they are compared to me. But it kind of looks like a giant mouth, does it not? It's like they're being fed into a huge mouth. In another size comparison, that's a gull. And we're not that different in size. So you can see why it's referred to as the guest area, because we can at least see them entering here. Oh, I'm gonna totally fall off. No, I didn't really make a major comment on this before, but I did kind of, I don't know if I would say a gasp or really a gasp or anything like that, but I did kind of notice the architecture in the building a bit, and that's what made me react to it. Is if you see this, how it kind of has that Japanese style look to it. That kind of caught my attention. That's why I kind of, unintentionally pointed it out. And she should look familiar. So if you recall back to the very beginning of this, when we had that dream that started off this whole story, it was her that we saw. And those statues we've been breaking are modeled after her. At least as far as, it would seem. So I don't want to fall down there. That would be really bad. We know how they treat kids here. And now we know what the feast is for. There's a whole lot of food. Does he even have teeth? It looks like he's just chewing on, like he's not even chewing on it, he's like sucking on meat. He's not even chewing it, he's just sucking on it. And he doesn't even know that I'm here. That one does. My... Jeez, come on, really? Oh my god. That is disgusting. That is just disgusting. I can't say I've ever gummed a pork chop, no. Okay. Do any of them have teeth? That is actually kind of terrifying. Ugh. These people are disgusting. He's savoring it. Ah, stop. I'm never going to want to eat chops again. Okay. Okay, we really need a hug after watching that. So basically, we've been on this vessel that's being used as a place where people can come and gorge themselves. They are just referred to as the guests, and basically it's a Japanese style restaurant. If you look at the the architecture, and stop running into the wall. You might not want to come out here, little buddy. And as you can tell, they have definitely been trying to grab me. So just be aware of that. Oh, nope, yeah. I like when she wakes up like she's waking up from a nightmare. Every time. He didn't even do anything, but he just shoved me in his mouth and just devoured me that way. That's not even savoring, he's just inhaled me. It's like dogs eating food. Oh, I see a Nome. I don't think there's any gnomes over this way. I think we just gotta go right up and over. I think. Uh-oh. Yeah, let's move. Back. We're gonna use his... Nope, we're not gonna use it. I was gonna try to bounce off of him. This works too. And we're free. Squeeze through. That looks like light. There we go. Freedom! Or not. Nope. You said nothing. You said nothing. Is he coming? I could have swore he saw me there. Maybe he didn't see me? Chef Boyardee really wants me. Alright, maybe he didn't see me. And I like how they have a bunch of toilets in one room. That's just lovely. Now I do believe there's a doll out in the hallway that we passed, but I think we have to climb up to get it. And I'm not sure if toilet paper is going to be heavy enough, but we'll try it. So if you look at the window, it's a bit the mirror, it's a bit cracked. And it's a little too soft. Okay, maybe we need something heavier. Oh my god, he's still there! And he shut the door. Or, yeah, he shut the door. Oh, okay. That's definitely heavy enough, right? He didn't see me. Is he coming back? Okay. I'm going to assume no. I think apparently he had to see me to make that work. I feel like I can. It sounds like I can hear him running. And no, never mind. He's chopping up meat again. Okay, I think I gotta be careful on this one. There we go. Okay, there's the statue. And I know there is like a lantern from the elevator. I think it's upstairs. The elevator. See, he's gonna hear this, right? Is it upstairs, I'm assuming? Okay, good. At least we're going up this time. Apparently he didn't hear it. That's comforting. I hear a squishy. Okay. There's indeed a squishy nearby. Where are you, squishy? Are you in the room next to me? Or are you hiding around here? I mean, I know you're gonna be in the room. Oh, he's literally next to one of the guests. You shouldn't be here. So, not only are they gorging themselves, they're like just literally passing out in these rooms. Also, if you notice when they were getting on the ship, they had masks on. I don't know if they all did. I know some of them definitely did. I also, when I see this, I know there's probably food in the bucket, and that's what they're literally just gorging themselves. But I always think of people putting your hand in water at sleepovers. That's never actually happened to me, but I know the stories. If you know, you know. Can I go back here? I cannot. Ooh. It's a lot of chub. Oh my god. Oh my god. The sound, oh my god. The sound. Jeebus. And the vibrations, oh man. Oh my god. Oh my god, oh my god. No, 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 no. Oh, no, no, they do have tea. This is not the time to be thinking about that. No! Almost had it. Almost had it. Of course I let go. Now I gotta listen. Now I gotta feel the rumble again. My God. Okay, all right. That's strangely anxiety-inducing. Hey, look, the painting on the wall. Not the time for that. Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay, come on. Come on. Oh, oh. Can I go under? Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay. Start moving, start moving, start moving, start moving. I don't think I could go under. There we go. Oi. Jeebus. Okay. Whew. We survived. Oh, the Nomes. So, notice the lights were flickering again. While she ate the gnome instead of the sausage. Guess we're not hugging any more gnomes, so... That does count as one of the gnomes, by the way. Or so I've heard. I think that's where the trophy pops if you have them. The real question here is, why did Six eat the gnome and not the sausage? I don't think there's any more lights here. I'll do a quick roundabout here, but I'm pretty sure we're clear. I do believe we need to follow her. So that is actually the end of the guest area, and this section is referred to as the ladies' quarter, or quarters. So let's see. You can already hear her. It's very subtle. The artwork and the ambience are really important in here. So there's mannequins, a broken mirror, lots of pictures. We have a eye, which has been a common theme. And a door we need to get through. This area should look familiar. We have seen it before. And we have heard that before. Okay, so... let's see what we got here. It's not helping much. We got eyes. We have a conjoined twin. So I do kind of wonder if the twin chefs at one point were conjoined. I see what I think looks like a pig, a face with just an eye. See some gnomes. Top left looks like a girl in a dress. Kind of middle of the screen or above me and off to the right next to the conjoined twin picture. Looks like her standing with others, and below that looks like we have another girl in a dress but covered. Is that a person is that a girl in a dress? I can't even tell. These are really hard to see. Okay, and if you look at the painting there, that's the Mai, I do believe. The thing that we're inside. So, we should be done at this point, as far as I can remember, with the lighter stuff. So no more candles or lanterns, and we should be done with the gnomes. I'm pretty sure they're not hugging us anymore after that. But there's one statue in here. I'm going to point out the fact that all the mannequins look just like her. Not creepy at all. I don't know what's worse, the fact that we know she heard us, the fact that she's not coming. So we got more paintings of young girls. And the one on the top right there is the one that was covered earlier. So I don't know if those are supposed to be her at like different ages or what exactly. That's a huge bed. Look at that. And she is gone. I don't know if I can quite reach that. I can. So she was brushing her hair in front of a shattered mirror. Now, assuming I got everything and I didn't miss anything, that should be all of the collectibles in the game. So, we just gotta go to the end here. So if you noticed, she was wearing a mask when we first saw her face forward. I do believe she was wearing it there too. Also a kimono, and she's very thin. In fact, she's the only thin person we have come across, except for the janitor. And if you think back to the prison, there was a body of a thin man who had hung himself. Now we are in the ladies' quarters. Like I said, we could hear her. You could hear her humming. And if you recall back to the lair where we ran into the janitor, there was a room with cameras in it. And if you looked at those cameras, you could see parts of this area, and you could hear her humming at that time. And also, just a reminder that when we first started this, it started off with Six seeing the lady, which is what she's referred to as, in a dream. So it's not the first time we've seen her. Plus, of course, all the statues. And I know some people have pointed out that some of the images seem similar to Six, so that they could be her. I'm not entirely sure I follow along with that, and I'll kind of explain that when we get into like the... I'll kind of explain that a little bit when we get into the ending, but I'll also explain that when we get through Little Nightmares 2, because there's a lot of connection between these, and I don't want to spoil anything there. And we've already kind of come across a lot of mannequins, which is I think what makes this place quite terrifying, because they could literally all be her, and we wouldn't even know. Like I said, I don't know what's scarier, the fact that we know she heard us, or the fact that she didn't come after us. I have a thought as to why she may not have come after us, but I'm going to wait until we finish with the secrets of the mob before I explain that. Oh, I love the music. The picture on the right of me, that's really interesting. It looks like they don't have a face. It's not terrifying at all. She's clearly not normal. Again, we got more mannequins and broken mirrors. And a room full of mannequins. Great. Just great. It's what we wanted. And they all look like her. Now, you'll probably notice that there's one mirror here that happens to be intact, which is your only clue as to what to do. Fairly straightforward, though. Oh, I did not mean to do that. I did not mean to do that. She's very intimidating. I'd like to get to see what happens if she gets you. I love the slow head turn. Right. So that was the ending. So I have a few comments to make regarding the last chapter. Plus, I thought I'd do a little bit of storyline discussion as I usually do before we close out. First of all, I wanted to make a couple comments on the lady. If you notice, of course, she had supernatural powers. She would float when she was chasing us, and and if she caught us, which you could see, that kind of made a bit of a whoopsie. She catches up to you. She kind of makes you levitate in front of her, and we don't really see the outcome of that yet, at least. So the other thing about her that I wanted to mention before getting into kind of the discussion aspect is that why the mirrors? Is it that she can't look at her reflection, or is that she's somehow reversing her powers against herself by having the mirror? Because there is, as far as I know, and this does get into uncharted territory for us a bit, but there are 2 at least mirrors that I know of in the mod that are not broken. 3 if you count the one that I broke earlier. Most of them in her area are in her area, but they're all broken. The other thing I wanted to comment on was 6, because I think that ending is really interesting, and it's probably one of the coolest endings to a game I've ever seen. That when 6 bit her, it seemed like, so she bit her in the neck, very similar to what she did to the gnome and the rat before that. The lights were flickering again, if you noticed. And it seemed like she absorbed her powers, because as you can see, that kind of mist was swirling around her, and she turns to the camera the same way that the lady did when we dreamt about her at the beginning of the game. So kind of a nice coming full circle type situation. Then after that, 6 basically just calmly walks through the guest area towards the exit, and everybody that gets near her basically has it basically just dies. So just kind of a couple of good points to bring up there. Now, there was one trophy I failed to mention, or I didn't fail to mention, I think I mentioned it earlier on, called Elusive. And the description just says, "Hey, sneaky rat, how do you keep slipping away?" And basically what you need to do is slide under a kind of an object to get away from an enemy. As far as I know, I think that can happen in any chapter, and it's probably going to happen early on in the game, or almost every chapter, because it can happen with the janitor, the chefs, and the guests. I'm not sure if if that works with the lady or not. Most people have that by then, but if you're missing that one, that's what it refers to, is just sliding under an object to get out of their reach, essentially. Now, so I had a few kind of points that I thought would be good discussion points. I have some on the guests, some on the lady, some on 6, and then just some on the Maw and connections between them in general. But I think let's close out to the main screen for this. As we can see, we've ended up here with 6 kind of on the outside. I don't know if that's actually supposed to be the Maw, because the Maw should be held above water, so I don't know exactly what that is. It looks kind of like maybe the Maw submerges itself somehow, I'm not entirely sure, but... Alright, so as I said, there's a few things that I kind of wanted to comment on before closing out, storyline-wise. And there's some stuff that I'll be able to talk about now, but some stuff is going to have to wait. There are 2 additional stories we are going to be looking at in the future. The first is called The Secrets of the Maw, which is an extension of this game. And then, of course, there's Little Nightmares 2, and they all intertwine very closely. So I'm only going to be talking about certain things right now, because they both do add quite a bit to the story. First off, we did the first chapter, which was the guest area here. And the guests, if you look on the website, the official website, they have descriptions for all the characters. And so I'm going to bring up those descriptions for the guests, the lady, and 6, because I think they're worth looking at. The others are too, it's just that we've kind of gone beyond them, and we've kind of brought up everything about them we need to at this point. And for the guests, it says, "Full to bursting. The guests are an essential part of the Maw's life cycle. Herded into the large hall, they slump into their bowing stools, and there they feed, without taste, without need, without end. And then they leave, one way or another." Now, when we were in the kitchen, the twin chefs seemed to be cooking, what, like I said, it kind of looked like cattle, or we came up with the idea of pork chops. They kind of looked like giant pork chops, and fish, and then obviously the children that were being sent by the janitor. So, where's the meat coming from? So, some of the larger meat is thought by many to be coming from the guests themselves, that the guests have not been leaving the Maw in the sense of actually getting off the ship, because we have not seen anybody actually walk out. We've only seen people walking in. And there's quite a few of them. And there's a whole lot of meat in that ship, between the sausages and the pork, the giant pork chops, and the fish and everything. Of course, the fish can be caught in the water, but the children and the guests are coming from somewhere else. Obviously, they're not just there on the ship. And a couple kind of bits that allude to that is, one is in the description. It says herded into the large hall. We use the word herd for cattle, essentially, or for anything of that sort. And then it kind of referred to basically them just gorging themselves, and then said, and then they leave one way or another. And I think that's supposed to infer that they're basically gorging themselves until they die. and then that's when they're used for more meat, essentially. So I think that's kind of a general thought. Some people believe kind of follow through on that, and I think that makes sense. And especially the one piece of evidence that really supports that are the shoes, ironically. There's so many shoes on the ship, if you think about it. Where are those shoes coming from? There's luggage in kind of getting into the depths of the ship, and there's shoes everywhere. And so many think that the shoes probably belong to the guests. And I think I commented early on that shoes are kind of becoming a common theme because we see them everywhere. And there's an entire room in the depths that are essentially just filled with shoes and something in the shoes trying to get to you. And we don't even know what that is. Now, the other description I wanted to bring up was the lady. Because on the official website it says, a watchful eye. With graceful restraint, the lady casts the hypnotic spell that keeps the engine running. Amidst the chaos of the world outside, the maw is the only place that makes sense, and now this rumor of an escaped child threatens everything. Nothing can be allowed to interfere. The guests must eat. The maw must survive. And I think the implication there is that the lady is essentially keeping the maw running, not because she can, but because she herself requires it somehow. Somehow having the guests here is allowing her to feed herself, and I know some discussion has come up, because I've been doing a lot of video watching on this, and I know a lot of discussion has come up about the idea that she's using, kind of like what Six was doing to them in the end, how they were kind of dying, and then that life force was kind of being taken out of them. I think that's essentially what she's doing. She's using them to kind of feed her powers, more specifically, rather than feeding herself, so to speak. Whether that means she's actually eating them or not, I don't entirely know. Now, Six is probably the most interesting part of the story, if you ask me. I think the lady's really interesting, but I think Six is more core to the story here. So Six, if you read her description, it says, awakening in a world she cannot recognize. Six must learn to trust someone else if she is to stand a chance of survival. She has already seen more than any normal child ever should, but then, Six is not a normal child. So official description of her. And so some people believe that of course they question the idea, what does it mean awakening in a world where she cannot recognize? And if you think back to when we started the story, she wakes up and it's like she doesn't remember how she got there. And honestly, from our perspective, we don't know how she got there, which I think is a really cool take on that. And if you look at every time that she wakes up, because if you die, you wake up like you're waking up from a nightmare, which this very much is in some ways, at least to me. I think a lot of people would see this as a nightmare. I think the implication seems to be that Six is basically, she can't remember things. So she's been referred to by people as an amnesiac. And I've kind of seen two takes on that. Is it that either she struggles to remember, like she can't remember stuff, or she's choosing not to remember the past in some way. And I would assume struggling more than anything else. And like I said, when she wakes up in the beginning, it's like she doesn't know where she is. Like she doesn't remember how she got there, which I think is really interesting. And I think that's been implied in the comics as well, because there is a comic series. I've seen little snippets of it. I've not read it myself, but I've seen enough to see that implication. Now, two things I wanted to bring up on Six before I start getting into the kind of meatier part of the discussion is, one, her personality, and two, her powers. Because we will see more of her personality in other ways, but first of all, Six's personality, as far as we know, and it's not much, she does not seem to care about others. And I'm not talking about how she chummed down on the gnome. That's not what I'm referring to. She left the runaway kids in the prison area and didn't do anything to help them. I saw somebody pointed that out, and I was like, that's actually a really good point, because if you look in other Little Nightmare stories, a lot of it are people working together, including her. And so, whether it's the comics, the games, whatever, she did not help those kids. She was just kind of out for herself. And so they've kind of looked at the idea that she might be a bit selfish in that sense. And again, I'm kind of keeping the gnome out of this because I think there's more to that than meets the eye. The other part is her powers. Before she nommed down on the lady, she clearly had some kind of power. So first of all, this all started off, you can see this back when she was eating bread initially and then meat later on. And eventually she started going on to feed on living things like the rat, the gnome, and eventually the lady, despite the fact that there was food around her, most of the time and more convenient in some cases, such as with the gnome who was handing her a sausage. So why did she not go for the sausage? So every time that Six eats, I said the lights flicker. And there's something else that was pointed out online, and I maybe I'll source the video and hear where I got it from. Apparently, because I have not seen it myself except in playback videos, and my settings are probably so dark that I wouldn't be able to see it, but there's a Shadow 6 figure that appears somewhere on the screen every time that those lights start to flicker. Like there's some kind of dark force behind what she's doing, something that's kind of taking over her, which I thought was really interesting. And so one of the ideas, and again I bring up the idea that Six has powers before numbing down on the lady, that perhaps when Six bites into something, she is somehow able to absorb their life force or their powers, or whatever powers that entity has. Such as when she took the lady's abilities, because clearly she did not have that power before she started, before she chomped into her neck, essentially. And this would explain why she chose the gnome over the sausage, because this dark force of hers is driving her towards living beings for some reason to kind of absorb their life force. Now that also kind of begs another question. How did Six get to the maw to begin with? Was she driven to the maw by hunger? Because that seems to be the reason that these other beings are here. The guests essentially are here. The whole idea of the maw, if you kind of step back and look at the bigger picture, has always been pointed at the basis as gluttony, essentially. They're just gorging themselves. They're essentially just consuming to feed this addiction for no purpose. And it even said in the description of the guests, let me see, I have it here. What was I saying about them? Because when it talks about how they come here and then they feed, and it said without taste, without need, without end. And so kind of the idea of feeding gluttony in this case. And then that comes back to how did this all, if we look at the basis of this game, take away everything about it, what's the name of the game? Little Nightmares. Without looking at Little Nightmares 2 or any of the other stories, in this case, and specifically the case of the maw, as far as we've seen it, I would say, and I think everybody has pointed this out, because who can't see it, Six is the Little Nightmare here. We're experiencing this story from the perspective of a nightmare to us, of course, because the game is absolutely terrifying. And we're not really thinking about what does that mean, little nightmares. Well, the only thing that's little in this world are the kids. Six is referred to, I think, as a 9-year-old. And if you look at the adults as I might refer to them, or some people might refer to them, there's quite a huge disparity in size between them, and that's not really explained. And I think that's very clearly done on purpose. The devs have a very unique way of storytelling here that I think is really interesting. And one common thing that they point out, and I've seen them point out in interviews, is how do you understand the mind of a child? And I was like, oh, that's such a, think back to when you were a child, like how wild your imagination was, just how you see the world in a whole different light. And it's kind of an interesting point to bring up. So when it comes down to the title, Little Nightmares, I think most people come to the idea that Six, in this case, is the Little Nightmare. And maybe that draws on to other characters. So that's what we'll have to see with The Secrets of the Maw and Little Nightmares 2. And who knows, down the road's Little Nightmares 3, because that is coming around the bend. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention, and this is kind of getting a little bit more collective into the Little Nightmares storyline, because it's not just focusing on the Maw specifically, even though that's what's going to drive it, is relationships. So first of all, the Maw itself, and then there's a lot of discussion over Six and the lady, and I have some commentary on that because there's a lot of really interesting stuff out there if you go reading on it, and the developers have even commented on it, and I'll even source that in here if people are interested in reading it. But starting off with the Maw, so as the comics go, and as far as fan interpretation goes, the way I understand it is that Six was supposedly brought to the Maw by someone referred to as the Ferryman. I don't think that's anything that's necessarily canonized, but that's kind of the idea that's been brought up, I believe, by the comics. I've seen some comic strips with a character that could hypothetically be this Ferryman. And there's a belief that the Ferryman is one who brings the kids here in general in the fandom, so I don't know how true that is. Keep in mind, a lot of this is really fandom driven, and the devs don't like to interfere with that because they don't want people not thinking about it. The whole idea of a story like this is to think. And so I also go back to the nursery rhyme. And one thing I will comment on the nursery rhyme that I did read is that the people that did like the sound and audio have said that even though that there are lyrics brought out of that by fans, that is totally by fans, and there's actually the Little Nightmares is supposed to be kind of like a wordless, languageless, existence. They don't talk to each other. And so when I say this, keep in mind that the people who did the audio design have commented on this. It's not necessarily to be taken as literal. And even to the extent that some of this doesn't exist. So I'm just bringing this up from a fan point of view because I think it's interesting. And if you look at the nursery rhyme, and I brought this up in episode 2 when we were dealing with the janitor, I did reference the video for that with lyrics. And so I just kind of wanted to bring some of those to the forefront. And if you read the nursery rhyme, part of the lyrics, and this isn't the whole thing, but it says, hello, hello, we're lonely. Help her, and we'll see. My way, and you'll see. A halo is sending him above our sea. Then it goes on to say, come fun, here she comes, Veronica. Come, he cup, Veronica. Run, here comes Veronica. Sent on a ferry upon our sea. Now again, this is kind of more fan interpretation type stuff. But I thought that was interesting. That some of those words that I thought were brought out were kind of interesting, because I was kind of wondering if the nursery rhyme, in the context of the Little Nightmares world, was supposed to be drawing people to the maw, perhaps more specifically drawing children to the maw, because we know that people are coming here. We don't know how they're getting here. There is some information that will come down the line later on that could apply to this. But maybe this is a way to draw, the nursery rhyme could be like a way to draw children in. I mean, and children specifically, we know that the janitor's keeping the children in the prison, and he's shipping them to the twin chefs in the kitchen, where they're presumably being prepared for the guests. And so I thought that the nursery rhyme might, in that sense, be kind of a way of calling people to the maw. Now, we know that some characters are drawn there from a need to feed, and I would assume that 6 is in that bracket. Maybe she wasn't brought there necessarily by the nursery rhyme. But I just kind of thought that was an interesting point. If you look at those lyrics and take them literally, if maybe that's a way of kind of pulling people in. Now again, that's probably not canonized or anything. That's probably that's just my thoughts on that one. I don't think I've ever heard any people say that before. But if you read the lyrics, it kind of makes that implication. And so that has been somewhat dispelled by the devs as far as the audio lyrics side of that. So I just thought it was an interesting point of discussion, though. Now, lastly, the other thing was, like I said, 6 and the lady. So it's been a long time running thought that there's a relationship between them. And there's clearly a relationship between them. They did meet each other. But I want to kind of dive into that just a little bit. And first of all, like I said, if we kind of follow the idea of the ferryman in the comics and the dream at the beginning, some people have brought up the idea that 6 seems to share a memory with the lady about being brought to the maw by the ferryman. I don't know if that's ever been confirmed, but there is a comic strip that kind of shows this, that there's a connection between them in that way. I have a thought on this because I don't think it's an obvious connection, but there's also the other point that when we first start the game, 6 has a dream where she sees the lady turning to her the way she was here at the end of the story. Now, there is an interview with the developers that very highly implies, they do not say anything necessarily outright, but they very highly imply that the lady and 6 do not have a mother-daughter relationship as many people seem to think, or I like their term for it, or many people seem to want. I like that they use the word want. I thought that was really interesting, because there's a lot of people that think that the lady and 6 are relatives of each other. And they did highly imply that the mother-daughter relationship is not a thing. So that is one thing I've ever, and honestly, to me, they're very cryptic about it. They don't directly say that, but they do imply that very heavily. Now, they never specifically said that there was no relationship between them. The only thing they implied is that there's no mother-daughter relationship, that they're not related in that sense. I am going to talk about that more in Little Nightmares too, eventually. My kind of take on that is some people were using that as an idea that there might be a relationship. The reason that 6 shares this memory with the lady, or that she's dreaming about them, is that there's a connection between them. And honestly, my take on it is a little different. The lady clearly has powers, some supernatural ability, magic, whatever you want to call it. Maybe this is just her sensing 6 as a little nightmare, or something that has the power to destroy her or even supersede her. that her having this connection to her is not really a connection, as it's more of a, she can sense her. She knows there's something around that can stop her. That's kind of my take on it. And that's my take, knowing stuff that happens in later, that we'll learn about later in the story. So that's all I had to say on that. I thought those are some interesting points to bring up. There is much more to dive into, but I want to hold off until we get to The Secrets of the Moth, which is an extension of this story, which is what we're going to do next. And also Little Nightmares 2, which really builds on this world in a really interesting and really cool way, and gets into some really, really good horror, if you ask me. With that being said, let's officially close things out for the night. Thank you all for joining, and I will see you all later.